For this tutorial, we're going to start from the very beginning by logging into our account and scheduling a meeting for our students. So I'm going to go ahead and start by signing in with Google, selecting my work account, launching Zoom. Now, once I'm in, you'll see that I have my personal meeting ID, but what I want to do right now is I want to go ahead and go to the home and I want to schedule a meeting. Now, there's two options here, so you need to decide which of the two options you prefer. I can either choose to schedule meetings each day I want the kids to get in, or each time in advance that we're going to have a meet. For me personally, that feels a little bit cumbersome because it means I'll be having to switch the links often. So here's what I would recommend. So start by renaming your topic, Mrs. Ramirez Classroom. So this basically becomes our synchronous classroom, our live classroom. Now, right now, you'll see that it's set for a certain time, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to select reoccurring meeting. Now, what this means is that this link will always be active. There's not a point where the link will stop until you've deleted the meeting. But here's what you need to do in order to make sure that you don't have kids getting into the room when you're not there. So the first thing I want to do is, first of all, I don't have a choice but to have a password on it, which is good. Now, I would suggest maybe doing for your password, it could be whatever password you want, maybe your room number. And you have the choice of enabling the waiting room or not enabling the waiting room. So let me explain the pros and the cons. The pro to having the waiting room on is that students will not be able to enter without you allowing them in. That, however, is also the con in this situation, because when you're teaching a class, in order for the students to enter the room, you have to manually push the button to let them in. Now, let's say that you're in the middle of a class and a student's internet goes out and they leave the room. The problem with that is if you're in the middle of teaching, you might not see them when they come back in, and they'll be waiting in the waiting room until you let them in. So personally, I would choose not to use the waiting room, but to go ahead and use your password. Okay, so now you might say, well, if I don't have the waiting room, I don't want kids being in the room by themselves. They won't be, because if you see down here in your advanced options, you have a couple options here. One of them is to enable the join before host. The reoccurring meeting is set so that people cannot get into the meeting if you are not there. If you want them to be able to get into the meeting without you there, which would happen maybe, for instance, in the situation of professional development with adults, then you would click this option. But for students, we're not going to click this option. So what this means is that if you are personally not in the meeting, the students will not be able to get in. So we won't have any problems with that. So again, to recap, I would click recurring meeting. I would click waiting room. I would unclick waiting room, and I would make sure that this is not clicked as well, enable join before host. Now you might want to go ahead and mute the participants upon entry. This just makes sure that when they come in, you're not hearing anything that they don't realize you're hearing. So now I'm going to click save. Once I've saved my account, I'm going to go ahead and go back into this, save my meeting, and I click on meetings, you'll see that it's saved there, Mrs. Ramirez's classroom. Now, possibly you want to copy the invitation, or you can also show the meeting invitation. Now, when you copy the invitation, it gives you this big, long information, and your kids really don't need all of that. All they really need is this information right here, the join the Zoom meeting. So you could actually just copy that information and add that to wherever you're going to be having them access the information. Now, one thing that I would say is with Chrome, you could add this to your Google Classroom. Another option is if I copy this and I have the kids paste it in, once they've done that, they can actually bookmark this address, and they could call this Zoom. They can just call this Classroom Zoom, or whatever you want them to call it. Then they will have that bookmarked and they can just click on it anytime they want to get into the Zoom meeting. Now, I'm going to go ahead and go back to my Zoom. I'm going to start this information. And one thing I forgot to mention is that you have the ability to add this to your calendar when you are setting up the Zoom meet. Okay, so now once I've started this, I'm going to go ahead and join. I just want to show you one other place that if you were already in the meeting, that you could copy the link. So you can copy it here, copy link, or you can copy it under participants by clicking on the invite button and copying the invite link. So these are all ways that you would schedule the meeting and get the meeting to them. We'll be talking about some of the other features in a bit in our next video.